Wait. Don't skip this if you're a parent. Let me tell you that you should listen to our podcast, Let Kids Play Podcast. Why? Because our children are lacking creativity and problem solving skills. On this podcast, we laugh, we have special guests, we talk about the traditional and homeschooling needs, and give you tips and hacks and things like that to enhance your experience of teaching your little ones under 5 years old. You can find the Let Kids Play podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hi guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James. And on my podcast, my guests and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. All right. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that the relationship between a father and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a young woman's life. And therefore, our mission here is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads and their daughters and give our support to all the girl dads and daughters throughout the world. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to listen, like, subscribe, and share, and follow us on all of our social media pages, and listen to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast on all of your podcast listening platforms. And also, make sure you guys check out our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. On that channel, you will find not only the Girl Dad Discussion podcast, but you'll also find the Earn and Earth podcast, which is a podcast I do with my brother. You'll find the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, which is the original podcast that started it all. We're like on 100 and something episodes now with that one. And then you'll also find the Love Walk Faith Talk podcast, which is a Bible study podcast, which is hosted by my sister, Gina Brooks. So make sure you guys go, again, check out our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. All right. So our product of the week, as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products to purchase in order to help the podcast. And so this week's products is our purpose journal and our purpose planner. Our purpose journal and our purpose planner. I believe that we all were created with purpose and for a purpose. And therefore, we all should be walking in our purpose. And that being said, we need to journal so that we know where we've been and where we are now. And then we also need to plan for where we're going. So you can get your purpose journal and purpose planner in the descriptions below this video, or if you're listening to it in the descriptions, you will find it. And then also they're both on Amazon, but you can find the descriptions below. Okay, so make sure that you guys check that out. And also, just a heads up, if you ever thought of starting your own podcast, you can get your copy of the Start Your Podcast Now in only 3 steps. It's an ebook that I wrote because of my podcasting journey. And people kept asking me, how do I start a podcast? So I wrote an ebook to made it real simple for you guys. Again, you can get your copy of To Start Your Podcast Now in only 3 steps ebook by going to ebooks.ejames.com. Again, that description will be below also. All right. That being said, today, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest. Miss Andrea, how you doing?
Oh my goodness, Ernest, I'm so good. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, let me say thank you for being here, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with us and we definitely appreciate it. So we're going to jump right into it. Andrea, do me a favor. Generally, right, we have girl dads on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. But since we're going to switch it up a little bit, because you're not a girl dad, obviously, but I would definitely believe that you will be a self-proclaimed daddy's girl, right?
Yes,
so
I am.
Let's start, first of all, by telling my audience a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Okay, so first of all, again, thank you. And I saw your post in the Need a Guest podcast group on Facebook. And it really got my attention because, as you said, my father, next month will be 39 years that he had passed. I know, I'm only 40. But I was very blessed to have a wonderful father who ended up passing away when I really felt I was too young. I'm 22. So who am I? So as I said, my name is Andrea Brunswick and I live in Canada. I'm in the Toronto area in Ontario. I'm a mom of 2. I have a son and a daughter, and they're young adults, 31 and almost 27. And I'm a widow. So my children lost their father. My daughter lost her dad. And that event of my losing my husband, combined with losing my father 18 years before my husband's passing, really changed the trajectory of my life. And it led me in the early 2000s to the life coaching arena, and I get certified, and I became a mindset coach. I don't know why that the life coach just never really sat with me. I think people had, like, what's a life coach? So I go by name. I call myself a creative life strategist, and primarily I work with women in that 50 plus range who are finding themselves very frustrated with where they're at this juncture in their life. You know, when you were talking about your purpose planner and the purpose journal, right? We do make those plans. And for any of us like myself, who used to play very much in the world, in the new thought, new age of spirituality, everything was about making your 5-year plan or making your 10-year plan, so on and so on, right? And we go ahead and do that. And then we reach that mark and our lives resemble nothing what that plan that we wanted, you know. So, and it's very frustrating. It's frustrating. Yesterday I paid more attention to it for some reason. I was out and about in a lot of different stores, and I was seeing, I mean, obviously it's the way the world is going now. There is no more Freedom 55. Like when I was in my 20s and selling life insurance, sell the Freedom 55 product. Well, now I'm seeing men and women, well, like pushing into their 60s and even older, where they're still needing to work.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in any case, that's what I do. I really help women understand how they got there, learn how to take accountability and be personally responsible for the life, and welcome it, and show them how that they can build a relationship. Well, I'm not really showing, but I guess I'm assisting, really building that relationship with God, which is something that I've only recently learned in my late 50s and into now my early 60s. And what a big difference it makes. I wish I would have known God the way I know him now when my father passed. So that's a little bit about myself. And ask anything you want, Ernest.
All right. Well, definitely, I didn't know that about you. So right now, on live, I'll also give you the invitation to be on the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, because that's all what we're about on that podcast. We talk about ways to help people in different areas of our lives or
I
whatever they're
love
dealing
that.
with. And so we're definitely I extend the invitation to have you there.
Oh, and I accept.
Great, great, great. So since we're here on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. So Andrea, in your own words, since you did admit to being a daddy's girl, in your own words, what does that mean to you to be a daddy's girl?
Okay, so first of all, I don't like dating myself, but just for that frame of reference, I was born in the early 60s. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And at that time, really in society, fathers, their main role was to be the provider.
Right.
And daddy would come home from work and the family would eat dinner. And, on the weekends, you would really see your father. But in my case, I had a mother who was not really in the best health. Mm-hmm. So my mom, unfortunately, and back then, unfortunately, for certain operations, you could be in hospitals for a much lengthier period of time than what they keep you now. So my father had his own business, which allowed him to have that freedom. So I was a daddy's girl. What does that mean, Ernest? Oh my God. I did everything with my father. I did everything with my parents when my mother wasn't at work or she wasn't in a hospital. But when it was just my father and myself, so my father, I'm blessed. I have the same group of friends since I'm 6 years old who, we get to talk about, oh my goodness, it was your father, Andrea, that would drive us and he would pick us up. Or when my father and I would go out for dinner, when he would pick me up from something. And, I was always welcome to be able to bring a friend. Going to the movies. I remember going to the movies with my father. We had specific things that were just for him and I to do, which he was very involved. He would have been considered a Mr. Mom. Remember the movie Mr. Mom?
Yeah.
That would have been my father, right? Because he needed to pick up that slack of when my mom, his wife, was in the hospital. And I always knew it was something special, I have to tell you, because I wasn't seeing that with a lot of my friends. But there's that expression, you don't know what you have till it's gone.
Yeah.
Well, I got that hard smack when I was 22 years old and my father passed away. And I honestly, Ernest, that experience, it rocked my world, and not in a good way. And that is really where I really realized truly what a daddy's girl I really was. My father was, I wasn't spoiled, but I think in certain ways that I was. And I knew I could always go to my father and I could ask for things or I could do things. I didn't really get in very much trouble from him. He often didn't understand me, or my choices, but he didn't stop me. But again, just going back to having lost my father, and it hit me very hard. So I lost my father in June, and I met my late husband in September. And it was a very, very fast relationship. And we moved in together within the first 2 weeks. And 3 years later, we were getting married. And I started to get really sad when it was time to plan the wedding, because all of those things that
Yeah.
a girl looks forward to, that her father's going to walk her down the aisle. There's going to be that dance with her father. And I wasn't going to be able to experience those things. I also was worrying, maybe unnecessarily so, but I was like, but this is a financial burden to put on my mom, because I'm still of that generation where the
Right.
parents paid
Yeah.
for the weddings and the bride's parents really would pay for the weddings. And I didn't have that same level of joy and happiness. So again, we don't know what we have until it's gone. And yeah, I definitely need to be on that Deal to Heal podcast,
Mm.
because that honestly, it sent me into a very bad depression.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
And I,
angry. I was
yeah.
angry.
And I definitely can relate, because there's the relationship, and it's like the dads and the daughters and the moms and the sons,
Yes.
right? And so when my mom passed away, um shoot, maybe about 10 years or more now, but when she passed away, I went into a deep depression, and that is another reason why I got into the work, because as I kind of got myself out of that with the help of some others, to help pull me through, because I was having suicidal ideations and everything, and so it was a process to get through that time period. But when I did make it out of it, then I, started to do different things and kind of get into the same space where you are with coaching and speaking. I'm more of a speaker, which even enhanced me get into the podcasting, because now I'm talking about my experiences with depression and all of those things. And so I definitely can agree with you, but how you don't know, sort of what you have until it's gone. And it's like, man, how much a part of your life that your parents play when you don't recognize them when they're there all the time, you
Right.
know. Yeah, and so you start realizing that, and sometimes it's the little subtle things, right? So I remember one day I wanted to call my mom, and I couldn't call her. You know what I mean? I was like, and even as an adult, you're going through your day to day and you're moving around and whatever, and so you kind of forget, you
Yes.
know, you kind of forget until you have that moment, like, oh, this would be something cool to share with mom, or this would be something cool to share with dad, and then there's that reality clicks back in. It's
That
like
they're not there.
they're not here. Yeah, and then one of the things that was crazy for me, because when my mom passed, in my phone it was her phone number from the house were saved under mom's house, right? But she wasn't the only one that lived there. So like my dad was there, my other sisters and brothers was there. And so after she passed, I think somebody called me or something. And so it comes up on the phone and it's like mom. And I'm like, I know it's not mom. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's like those little subtle things. It's like, wow, did
It
you
is the
really?
subtle
Yeah,
things, Ernest. It
yeah,
is. All those little nuances. And you're right, between mothers and sons. I have a son and I have a daughter. And I saw my brother's relationship with my late mother. He would have been classified a mama's boy,
yeah,
which it's unfortunately the stereotypes and the stigmas that get put on. Is there really anything wrong with the son absolutely loving his mother?
no,
No. And is there anything wrong with the daughter absolutely loving and adoring her father? No.
no,
And is there anything wrong with the father adoring his daughter? No. Or a mother adoring her son? No, because they shape us, they form us, they are here, they're
yeah,
our protectors. And that was something that I really, when my father passed, I felt like, I had that same feeling when my husband passed, but almost like a rug gets pulled out from underneath your feet and you're free falling and you can't find your footing. Yeah. See,
yeah,
for me, because I was such a daddy's girl and my late husband was such an involved father with both our son and our daughter, I could have been projecting a little bit too much. I mean, now that I
yeah.
think about it, but those same things that not that my son wouldn't experience with the loss of his dad, but for my daughter to also to not be able to have from
Yeah.
her dad, right? And
Yeah.
there's, I don't think, I was thinking about this today, as a matter of fact. I don't know what was making me think it about how we're told that we're to honor our parents. And I thought I did when I was younger. I thought I honored my mom. When my dad was on his deathbed, he had made me promise that I would take care of my mom. My brother and sister were already married, and they already had their started their families. I'm 9 and 10 years younger. I misunderstood what he meant. I think I took it far too literally, but of course I said yes. And I am going to make a point. So I felt like I was honoring her, but I wasn't doing it cheerfully. to be
Mhm.
to be truthful.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a cheerful giver. Okay. I just felt like I was fulfilling this obligation that was put forth to me. And that was probably a bit of the depression from losing my father. And I'm sure my mother losing her husband. I've lost mine now. So I can understand that madness of grief. And when we're parents, we don't want to show our children,
Right.
right? Even
Yeah.
though we should. Even though we should talk about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know even with my daughter, um, during that time period when my mom passed away, what made it even harder for me and definitely for her was my before my mom passed away, 3 years before my mom passed away, my wife at the time, her mom, which I was very close to, passed away. And
Oh,
then 3 years later, my mom passed away. And so to me, as devastating as that was for me, because these were two women that I loved, from my daughter, it was both of her grandmothers,
yeah.
and so I remember, and I talk about it a lot sometimes. When that after that happened, after that time period, it would be days where me and her would be playing because she was probably, I think my daughter maybe was like 8 or 9, still pretty young. And there'd be days where we'd be playing and I'm playing with her and whatever we're doing, and then she'll just stop and start crying. And I'll be like, "What's wrong?" And she'll be like, "I miss my grandmothers." Because now she's lost both grandmothers within
Yes.
a short period of time. And so now with her, she's 21 now, and sometimes we have those conversations because she's like, "I don't even remember, like I don't remember them." And so I have to bring out like the old pictures books, like
Right.
they
So you
were
could
they were
talk about,
active. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, like they were active in your life. They were here. They
Yes.
played a part. And one of the last home videos that I have of her grandmother on her mom's side, because when she started getting sick, she went to hospice, and so we had a birthday party for her at the hospice. And in that same birthday party, we celebrated my daughter's birthday. And so even though she was young, so she don't remember it, but I'm able to show her like she was there for you. She was active,
Yes.
and that means a lot.
It
And like I
does,
said, we
Ernest.
don't necessarily pay attention to it, until after the fact, unfortunately.
Right. And we'll also often block things out just to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
We'll purposely forget things because it's sometimes too painful to remember. And when you and I were talking before you started the recording, and we were, talking about the bad rap that often men will receive, right?
Mhm.
Fathers, but was making me think back to, was before we had our daughter. So how you and your group of friends will often be getting married at the same time, and then
Yeah.
this group's just, well, that's how it was. And I remembered some of my friends being so worrisome, like they didn't create the space and the room for the father, for their husband, to
Mhm.
be involved when when the baby, when they were babies, when their
Right.
daughters or their sons were newborns within that first year, because no, he's not going to know how to do this or there. So I think sometimes, depending on the mother's level of comfortability and how do I say this, and not being neurotic
Yeah.
and being a control freak. That's because that is truly, I had to have 2 C-sections and I was put out for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And God bless, my late husband, George, was the one to be able to first feed both my son and my daughter. The
Yeah.
doctors let him stay in there for the C-section. So he was able to watch everything. I was put out, thank goodness. So the bonding, I mean, the changing of the diapers, and that's where it really starts. And if we deny, and I think as women sometimes we get a little bit carried away and we want to just control things because we're just so neurotic and nervous. And often if
Yeah.
we're a first-time mother, and that's okay because we're nervous, but it starts to create a separation between the father and the babies, whether
Yeah.
they're daughters or they're the sons. So I
Yeah.
think it's really important for the mother to foster that relationship between the father and the children, and especially with the girls.
Yeah. And so I think that's you're right on the money with that. So I think about even with me when my daughter was born, her mom had to have a C-section also, and but when my daughter was born, number one, I'm one of nine, right? So
Okay.
I'm one of nine, and I'm the oldest boy, the fourth child, but the oldest boy. And one thing that my mom used to do, when we were coming along, every time she would have a another child, she would bring the baby to the older child. So after I was born, when my brother, who's right after me, was born, she brought him to me, right, and she put him in my arms
That's
and said, "This is
beautiful.
this is your baby." Like, this is your baby. You got to take care of him, right? And she did that with each of us as we came along. Like the next one, it was like, all right, this is your baby. You got to take care of him. And so that being said, with me having 5 younger sisters and brothers, definitely didn't have a problem with babies, And
No,
so
and it
when my
allowed you to
daughter
be
was born,
comfortable. It
yeah,
allowed you to be comfortable.
yeah. And so when my daughter was born, I was already used to that. I'm like, hey, give her to me. I got her. And then her mom went through a short spell of postpartum also,
Right.
which really was like, all right, let me give you a break because, she needed that at that time. But that even added to the bond that me and my daughter formed, because I was changing the Pampers and, what I
Yes.
mean? And so, and then also even as she got older, me and her mom worked different shifts. And so a lot of the times, especially on the weekends, she was with me all the time, So it was like, hey, where's your shadow? That's what everybody would say. Where's your shadow? Because it was always the two of us.
Right.
And so I think that, definitely fathers want that opportunity to bond,
Yes,
and
exactly.
not only do they want it, but they need it. They need that opportunity to step up. They need the opportunity to bond with the child, and even to learn what it is to take care of that child. Because God forbid something did happen to the
Yes,
mom, and you have to take care of. You should know how to take care of your child. You know what I'm saying?
most
You should know
definitely.
how to do
Most
that.
definitely. And not all women know how to take care of a child. I mean, it people think that it's an instinctive thing, right? And maybe for the most part it is. I don't know. I was an aunt really young, so
Yeah,
I got to get that experience. Whereas with my late husband, no, he didn't have that. It was, when I'm thinking back, he just naturally was able to just bond and gravitate,
yeah,
right? And I love that because we did that with our son when I was pregnant and when he came to the hospital and when I gave birth to his sister. And yeah, this is your baby now.
yeah,
This is your baby. And that's such a, fostering these kind of relationships really, you would think it'd be done more because
mhm,
it's just such a simple, beautiful thing that has such a deep impact in
yeah,
our lives, and it creates such a space I think for us and even as we grow and as we mature, and I think more men given the opportunity and the support instead of the criticism. You know, listen, I'm a woman and I know I was probably quite critical, maybe sometimes as a wife. But I think we have to kind of keep that in check a little bit because none of us like to be criticized. And when we're criticized, it really makes us feel uncertain and
Yeah,
just not capable. And then that makes space for all of this other stuff to start happening. So, it's so special to be a daddy's girl. It's so honestly, it's hard now. Listen, I'm 61, right?
yeah,
My father died when I was 22, so there's a big chunk. But when I'm thinking here on this, and I'm going back in my head, and I'm picturing us when he would take me, when he would take me to the Disney movies, and I saw Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, or there was a Hungarian restaurant here in downtown Toronto that was like our little spot that my father would
yeah,
take me to, and we'd go to the zoo and just do these special things that you talk to other people and they haven't been blessed
yeah,
to have that experience, right?
yeah,
I'm very blessed. But it hurt. It really hurt, Ernest, when that was taken away from me. It really hurt to not have my father anymore. It made me feel unsafe, I think, in the world
yeah,
is the best way to describe it, because a father does. Listen, parents as a whole, right?
right,
The whole function of us is to represent and to create that space of security for our children. They feel safe with us, and they feel protected. And when that's taken away, at least for me, it really brought up these feelings of feeling insecure and uncertain. And okay, I don't want to blame everything on the 80s, but it was the 80s were very wild, and
yeah,
I became that much more of that wild child, that
yeah,
rebellious, not realizing that I was probably wanting to stuff that pain. But it
yeah,
doesn't matter what you do, Ernest. You can't stuff it down.
yeah, yeah. You
Because
got
it's
to
going to
deal
come
with it.
back. It's going to come back and
Yeah,
it's going to bite you in the butt. And it did. And it caused me to try to take my own life, that
yeah,
depression.
yeah, yeah.
So
So,
I'm glad you share, because I think sharing is a
mhm.
vital, vital thing.
Oh, definitely. And so one of the main reasons that I share, because I know, even in my own experience, community and like minded people who have been through what you're going through is how I got through it.
Yes.
And so coming on the other side of it, and even going through COVID, it's like, especially amongst men, there's so many things that we're dealing with that we're holding in, and we're not sharing. And so, with the rise in suicides and all of those type things, it's like, look, we got to talk about it. We got to talk about it because we got to let people know that they can make it through some of these things. Like, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's tough, but you're not the only one that's dealing with it. You're not the only
Yes.
one who's dealt with it. And by connecting with those people who has been through a similar situation, they can support you in order to help you get through it. And so, but if we're not having the conversations, if we're not admitting where we hurt, then that other person is like, okay, well, I'm not going to say nothing because they didn't say anything. And so now they're suffering in silence when really we can be the key to help them get through what they're going through because
Absolutely.
of us sharing. And so I want to ask you, Andrea, because you talked about the experience of losing your father and then also with your husband passing. How did that, um, having that relation, or should I just say having that situation, because you know what that felt like when your father passed away, in what way would you probably say that that kind of aided you in helping your daughter even after her father passed away to kind of deal with her emotions and things that she may have been going through?
Well, I think partially what I did differently, and I think it was only because of where we were at. Like, my father passed away in 1985. In the 80s, people were not, or at least I wasn't hearing it, and it was not easily accessible. talking about grief and talking about loss.
Mhm.
And because I was so young, my friends didn't want to talk to me about it.
Right.
Their parents were all healthy,
Yeah.
and I was born to older parents, right?
Mm.
So funny, and that's a great question because so my husband passed in his sleep in our bed. So I woke up and my husband didn't.
Mm.
So that evening, friends came over to visit. And I remembered saying to one of them that I had met when I was in college and I was her maid of honor. She was our maid of honor. So we had been for those 20 years at that point
Yeah.
or more, in each other's lives. And I said, I'm going to have to do something different this time than what I did when my father. I can't, first of all, for myself, I can't allow myself to go to that very dark place
Right.
that I did with when my father passed because I'm not in my 20s anymore and I'm a mother now.
Hmm.
So just a story just to really illustrate this. So George this month will be 21 years of his passing. I think it was July and I put the kids in day camp and I had just come home after dropping them off and I was a cigarette smoker at the time and I was outside and I was like a chain smoker. And I started to have these thoughts because the kids were so not only not so much as again she was 5.5 but Ryan was 10, so it
Hmm.
was hitting him a lot harder.
Right.
Not that she didn't miss her father because she did, but there would be the talk like, oh, I wish we were just a family again, I wish we would be with daddy, and I started to have these suicide idolations about how I could take my life and the life of my kids, like boom, nobody gets hurt really,
Right.
it's just gonna happen and then we're gonna be together in heaven, right? Was what,
Yeah.
and I got so scared, Ernest. Like I'm thinking, oh my God, Andrea, you're one thing to think about taking your own life, but now you're thinking about taking your life and your children's life. And I got scared shitless. But I heard God say to me, go into your room and find the card to the grief counselor from the funeral home for George. I didn't know where I put the folder. I ripped my drawers apart. Now, I lived a 5-minute walk to the hospital of where both my children were born. I could have
Hmm.
walked to the emergency room, but Ernest, what would have happened if I did that? They would have put me in a straitjacket. They would have drugged me beyond. They would have put me on a lock ward, and then Children's Aid would have come in and taken my kids. But I found that card, and I phoned the funeral home. She was there, but by the grace of God. And I started to tell her what was going on, and she said, Ernest, one of the biggest gifts I've ever been given, she said, Andrea, you need to know that those thoughts are normal.
Hmm.
Those are normal thoughts that go along with grief. And it was like the blood started to come back into my face, right? Because my heart was able to come out of my throat and I was really able to breathe because that really scared me. She then referred me to a psychiatrist that dealt solely in grief and with young spouses and their children. So that's what I started to do differently. I got myself and the kids seeing this doctor, and then I got us involved in bereavement groups. So I was with the adults, and the kids were with their own peers.
Hmm.
And I have to tell you, I remember those first few groups on a Monday, and my son was sitting behind the driver's seat in the car, him and his sister in the back, and he's kicking my seat because he doesn't want to go. He does not want to go to a bereavement group, and he's
Hmm.
kicking it. And I had to say, we have to toughen up sometimes as a parent. And then I had to say, listen, Ryan, I know you don't want to go. I know you don't want to talk about this, but I'm sorry because I didn't talk about things like this when your grandfather passed away. And I tried to stuff my feelings down with drugs and alcohol. And I don't want that for you. You're going to
Right.
be out of elementary school. You're going to be going to middle school. You're going to be going to high school. I don't want you, you're a guy,
Hmm.
just natural boys don't talk. They don't
Right.
really share. They clam up. Okay. So I knew I had to show up as that very stern. No, this is where you and Natalie are going. This is what's going to happen for you. And throughout, I would say about the first 6 years, because of my mother, their grandmother passed away 3 years after, and they lived with her from the time they were born. So my children had a similar experience to your daughter losing. Prior to my husband passing, my husband's father passed, and both of his grandmothers. So the kids lost in a really short period of time their family, and
Yeah.
that because grandparents play a huge role. My
Yep.
father-in-law stepped into the role. I lost my dad in June. I met my husband in September. Not my father-in-law at the time, who wasn't my father-in-law yet, but he stepped into the role of being a father for me. And then when I lost him, it kind of felt like I lost my father all over again. And it messes with us, Ernest. I mean, truth be said.
Yeah.
And I'm so thrilled that you're having these conversations. I mean, God bless our parents. Like, I see some of my friends, their parents are going into their 90s or in their late 80s, and they're very blessed to still have their parents around,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter how old we are.
Yep.
You can be 60 and lose a parent, and you can feel like that 10-year-old.
Yeah. And I remember hearing a pastor say this one time, because as we're recording this, we're a couple days away from Mother's Day. And I remember hearing a pastor talking one day, and he was saying, because he had lost his mom, and he was saying, it was getting around Mother's Day, and every time we get around that time, people will start coming to him saying, "Oh, I'm sorry that you lost your mom. I'm sorry, And he would always say, not necessarily to them at the time, but he was saying it as he was speaking, like, you're saying you're sorry for me, but I'm really sorry for you, because I've already experienced a level of pain that you have yet to experience, because your parents not going to live forever. And I've felt it, I've dealt with it, I'm dealing with it, but you have no idea yet. You know what I mean? And he was just kind of giving that, like, don't feel sorry for me. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel sorry for you. And one of the things you mentioned about was the bereavement. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I definitely went to bereavement around that time that my mom passed away. It played a huge part of my life, to the point that I did my time. I think the whole thing was a couple weeks, maybe 12 weeks or something like that. And I did my time in there in my sessions. And I loved it so much that I stayed and I became a volunteer. And I think I was there for maybe a year as a volunteer, doing the bereavement sessions. And then after that, I started a nonprofit organization doing bereavement sessions, and I did that for maybe a year or two before I stopped. But that, again, that was like-minded people with like-minded experiences
Well,
that's
that's
dealing
just
with
it.
the grief and that are working their way through it, and you're all able to come together and support each other. And that's why
Right.
I think these conversations and just whatever that you're dealing with, why it's so important, like you said earlier, to share, because we're all going through life together. We're experiencing life together. And
There's
we're
the relatability.
yeah.
And there's that related, like when George first passed, Ernest, I remember I took the kids to the mall. Maybe your daughter was into this show, Molly and Lynette.
I don't
Doesn't
know.
matter.
She may have.
Anyways, Molly and Lynette were going to be at the mall. And the year before that, when my husband was alive, we went as the family and we saw her. Ernest, I can't begin to tell you. First of all, I felt like I had the word freak stamped on my forehead. I just really felt like this freak. And I would get such anxiety when I would see families. And when your children are little and the fathers usually put their little kids on their shoulders when you're
Yeah.
in public places. I waited for that show to be over. And my son at the time, there were Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and he was into these Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and there was a store in there, and he was trading them, and I let him do his thing. And then I said to the kids, I said, we have to go. Mommy has to go now. Like, it was like, we need to go, and we need to go right now. And I needed to go home, and I needed to get in my bed, like the anxiety and the panic was just at this heightened beyond. So bereavement groups are super important. Being and feeling not alone. And that's what's important for them, is so that we don't feel alone in this unknown area of our life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I want to say thank you, Andrea, because I didn't think we were going this way, but it sounds good, right? Because I think that again we're living life together and we're living these experiences together, and so I love the fact that we can share, we can talk about it, because that's the only way we're going to get through it. So we're here. So I want to switch it up just a little bit and go into the next segment of the podcast, which is called the Getting to the Core segment, which is built off of the Core 4 ebook that I wrote. And it's the Core 4, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. To my audience, you guys can get your copy of the Core 4 at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com. You guys can get your copy of the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. And so, Andrea, I sent you a copy.
Thank you.
Ahead of time, so you have a chance to look at it. The core 4 values, when I wrote this, that I believe is at its core, definitely fatherhood and involves much more. But I think at its core, there are 4 values that every daughter should receive from her father. And so it's guidance, it's affirmation, it's love and affection, and lastly, it's protection. And so just remembering back on the impact that your dad had on your life, of those 4 values, which one do you probably think that he probably instilled in you the most or showed you the most out of those 4? Again, there's guidance, it's affirmation, it's love and affection, and it's protection.
Man, now we get to pick one.
You can pick them all, but I was just
Well, to be honest with you, he definitely guided me, and I had shared about how protected that I felt, right, by my father, and he definitely affirmed me. He made me feel that I had value, and that I was a valuable part of this world, because we all do life together. And he was a very loving man. He was truly a very loving man. And I shared this with you before we recorded, that he was so great to my friends.
Yeah.
And allowing me, and if we went out for dinners, that we could invite a friend with us, whether I went out with both my parents or was just my father. He was so special. And the sad part, again, because we don't know these things until someone's not here, I don't know if he really knew that. And that's sometimes what saddens my heart, because to be honest with you, that last year of his life, when he was in a hospital for the full year, I was angry. I didn't know. I guess I was angry that my father was dying. So I couldn't do hospitals anymore, and I would see him less and less, and that guilt and that shame bites you. Yeah. I was very blessed, Ernest. In all honesty, I really believe I received all 4 from him. Yeah.
Good. Great. So, Andrea, first of all, I want to say my condolences for your father and your husband. I wanted to kind of wait till we get to the end before I said that, but I definitely wanted to extend that to you. I want you to have the last word, and you can leave us with, whatever word of advice, whatever to have you feel to leave us. And I want you to also leave us with your social media and contact information. And
absolutely.
Anyone that may want to contact you to work with you also. And we're definitely going to have you on the Deal to Heal.
I would love that. That would be such an honor.
Yeah, we'll get more into your work. So I'll give you a chance to think about that, how you want to leave us. To my audience, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure that you guys are following us and checking us out on all of our websites and other things that we have going on, including my main website, which is dealhealfulfill.org. Because as you guys know, my mission, my personal mission, is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. And that is my main mission and for my life. So make sure you guys go there. You can find out more about me as a speaker, as a podcaster, as a workshop facilitator, and even to have me to come to either your school or organization to even do a workshop or something like that. But again, that's the dealhealfulfill.org website. And also make sure you guys are checking us out on our inspirational t-shirt line that we have at deal2healtees.com. That's deal the number 2 healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline, and we mean it, right? So make sure you guys go there and check out our inspirational tees that we have, which includes t-shirts for our podcast. So you can order your t-shirt with our podcast logos on it. Again, the Deal to Heal podcast, and also the Girl Dad Discussions podcast logo on a t-shirt, and that can be found at our inspirational t-shirt line, deal2healtees.com. Last but not least, make sure you guys go to ebooks by ejames.com, ebooks by ejames.com, so that you can get your copy of the Core 4. You get your copy of the Core 4, as well as I mentioned earlier, the Start Your Podcast Now ebook, and then some other ebooks that are there too. So again, go to ebooks by ejames.com in order to check out the ebooks that we have available. Also, one of the things that I'm very happy that I've been blessed to be a part of is an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every quarter of the year. And I think we're certainly going to be going to every other month. We'll be having these free virtual workshops where we talk about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, everything concerning forgiveness, which I think is a very important conversation for us to have. And I'm very blessed to be able to be a part of this organization. So make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for the free virtual workshops. You can take it on your phone or on your laptop, or you can just go to Eventbrite and register there for the forgiveness workshop under being held by the Forgiveness Mission. So make sure you guys check that out. Andrea, once again, I want to say thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for this conversation. I definitely loved it. Loved having it with it. I can't even talk. I loved having the conversation with you, and I loved having you as a guest, and I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ernest. I loved having this conversation too. So what was my I think the final real final message I want to leave for your girl dads is to never forget how important you are to your daughters, and never forget how important you are to their mothers, even though sometimes it may not seem like that. Because just remember, the way the father treats his wife or the mother of his daughter is going to be everything for the way the daughter sees herself. Mm-hmm. So let's not forget that. And any women that are listening, just know how important it is for your daughter's father to be able to play a functioning role in her life. But, we never know where we sit. There's that expression, man plans, and God sits and laughs. Mm-hmm. Because it's true. So say the things that need to be said. Don't hold back. Say I love you as often, because I didn't expect my husband to not wake up. I didn't expect him to pass away in his sleep. So it literally, that expression, in an instant, your life could change, but it's so very true. So you never want to have that regret. I mean, at the end of the day, I think we can't avoid that. There's maybe something in life that we're going to regret. But if you can, with purpose, do things so you're not going to be at that juncture of being regretful, because that's painful and that really messes with your head. So I think that's really what I'd like to leave your audience with in terms of what I feel is an important message. So thank you. So you can find me. You can find me on, I haven't started TikTok yet. I'm not quite sure if I want to do that, but you can, I'm just not too sure. You can find me on Instagram under Andrea Brunswick. You can find me on Facebook, but on my Facebook, it's Andrea Julia Brunswick. I use my middle name for that one. LinkedIn, it's Andrea Brunswick. Ernest, I saw you with your website. My website is coming for renewal. I'm not sure if I want to do an app. I'm not sure. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, you can find me. It's not fully ready yet, but I've created it's a prayer journal that I've created called Stamp It on Your Heart. And I'm very new to my Father's Word. So it's a way, I'm very anointed because honestly, this was given to me. It's a very creative way. I will send once it's done. I'll send the link so that you can, if you want, share that with your audience. But you take your personal scriptures and you put them in the middle of the page and you meditate on it. And then there's like these thought bubbles and what that scripture is actually saying, because as I'm doing this new walk now with God, I understand that his word is a seed and it needs to be planted on our heart. And the soil is in our heart, and that's what's going to take root. So I've been doing it for myself, and I've been really, really receiving such wonderful benefits that God said to me, Andrew, you need to now release this out to others. And I'll have a link that I can send you where people can get a free 30-minute breakthrough session with me. So I can see it's not a sales call. If they want to talk to me, we can schedule another call of what that would be to work with me. But this is really my way of giving back and helping other people, women primarily, get some form of a breakthrough, because we get in those thought loops and, it becomes a war zone between the two ears. Ernest, I want to say thank you to you. This was truly an honor and a pleasure to be able to share my experience of being a daddy's girl and my experience of having a wonderful husband who was a wonderful father. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you so very much for being on. And we can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where our mission is to amplify the voices, of girl dads and our daughters throughout the world. So until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.
Hey, it's Alex
and Bella
from Let's Not Sugarcoat It, a podcast where each week we bring you real, raw, and unfiltered conversations.
Our guests share their life's journeys in entrepreneurship, relationship, parenthood, and much, much more
in an authentic and raw way where no one sugarcoats life's messes and successes.
Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of your favorite podcast apps, and tune in every Wednesday for new episodes.